I'm Margot Long with PWL Partnership. I've been a partner for almost 16 years, and our office has been around for over 36 years. We have had the great opportunity to work with many of the architects, planners, and city officials on most of the waterfronts in Vancouver. After Expo 86, so much of the interest was put on Vancouver, and the whole development industry and the waterfront kind of flourished here. So we've really enjoyed the opportunity of working on the planning, the landscape architecture, and a lot of implementing the places. We've also been able to see most of them built fully out. Southeast Falls Creek here is still, the first phase is just underway, and you know, we've been able to learn from many of the projects that have been built. So on Southeast Falls Creek, we started working with the city shortly before they won the bid for the Vancouver 2010 Winter Olympics. We started in about 2003, and Southeast Falls Creek is 80 acres. 50 acres of it is started as industrial wasteland, and 30 acres of it was privately owned by developers. We started working with one of the architects, Via Architecture, on the planning of it. They had been working on it for a number of years, and I think the city decided that it was time to have a more integrated team. We came on and started working to do the official community plan for the city. The projects that, to me, are the most successful are the ones where the open space has been planned first and that the buildings fit in around that. And that's what makes Vancouver, I think, so special as a place, is the great waterfronts, the great parks, the open space, and just the way the open space, the public open space, intertwines together. As we started working on the project, the city, this was before the developer was chosen, the city was put a large team together, social planning, engineering, parks, and their technical team, and the project managers for the site. And we met weekly, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, all together. And I would say the city really challenged the consultant group to work through something. It was one of the most collaborative processes we've ever worked on. As landscape architects, one of the differences between this process, planning and landscape architectural process, different from the other ones we've worked on, is that the city was the client for this process. And this was the first time the city was actually developing a major part of the waterfront, and the developer was to slip into the parcels behind. So even from a city process, it was different. When we started the process, the city never intended it to be a LEED Platinum neighborhood project, but through the process and the guidelines and the parameters that the city set up, before it was finally completed, the city applied for LEED Platinum neighborhood, and it was one of the first ones in North America to get that designation. One of the things to remember is, through the planning process, we divided the site into 3 neighborhoods. There was the rail yard neighborhoods, the shipyard neighborhoods, and the works yard neighborhoods. Those were historical on the site, and those helped inform, I would say, the gritty character of the site, and it has that sort of industrial character that reflected what was originally here. The pavey material like the heavy timber deck, the giant oversized cleats are really reflections and reinforcing the shipyard character and heritage that was originally here, which is very different than some of the other waterfronts you see in Vancouver. So now I'll just take you and show you some of the kind of unique qualities of the waterfront. So one of the different things about this waterfront from some of the other waterfronts along Vancouver's 26-kilometer seawall is that this area is quite urban, and you can actually, it's designed so that you can get right down into the water in many different sections. Historically, the creek has been fairly polluted. Over the years, it's become cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And when we started this process, the engineers said, no, we don't want anybody to get close to the water. And we said that, well, the water's becoming cleaner, and at the end of this process, and probably 10 years from now, the water may be even clean enough to swim in. So they backed off, and this is, again, one of the interesting areas where you can actually get down into the water. One of the successes of a plan is flexibility. And I'll just tell you kind of a little story about these oversized cleats here that look like massive benches. They really were much smaller when we had designed them and put them on the working drawings. And because everything is on computer now, for some reason, someone pushed a button on the computer, and they ended up much larger when they got tendered out. And when they were brought to the site, about 10 times the size that they were supposed to be. We had to figure out what to do with them. And actually, it's been probably one of the kind of most interesting mistakes that we've ever made on a project, just because they've been used and adapted for a number of different things. I've been out here, and there have been models lying on them. Kids jump on them, run along them, and jump off. One of our 6 partners, Derek Lee, is responsible for most of the custom-built site furnishings on the site. And again, this was a product of the city wanting really interesting site furnishings that were different. So these chairs, which we call the swivel chairs, are meant so that you can sit and face the sun if you want, turn and face people coming over the bridge, or turn and sit and face the mountains or the view. One of the other things with all the other site furnishings is that they're made to be used in a variety of different ways. If we look over at the little triangle park here, these benches, long benches, besides the fact that mountain bikers use them as a running track, the people lie in them. We see people snuggling up together. They're exactly the form of your body, and people use them in a variety of different ways. So the design of the waterfront here is really not a seawall as much as it is a continuous park, and with a variety of different opportunities. We could never imagine how all the residents of the area and the users could envision using the space. So we've provided the space for them, and they've created their own animation throughout the whole entire waterfront. All of the paved area underneath the seawall here is structural soil cells. So there's growing medium for all of these trees to grow big. So what we've noticed here is these trees have grown twice as fast as any of the trees that were planted in the city at the same time, and which means they're healthier. These trees aren't irrigated, so They collect all the rainwater runs into the channels here. It's collected in the permeable areas of the granite sets and within the rain gardens along here. So it's really become, I would say, a lush area in a relatively short time without the Parks Board having to maintain it in a really detailed manner. When any water is filled in so that development sites could be developed, you have to compensate 2 to 1. So this island was created to compensate for the habitat compensation, and it's called Habitat Island. I'm not sure exactly who named the island, but it is called Habitat Island, and it's really it's all native vegetation, and it creates the 3 shorelines as opposed to 1 that was needed to compensate for the habitat, the water aquatic habitat that was filled in when the site was developed. It's become a really interesting place where people go on. It's not a true island, but they go on and off it, and it has just 1 path that takes you not even necessarily around it, and people use it for a variety of different things, but it's become something that you discover, and so some people don't even know you can go on it. So you've heard it here first, you can go on it. One of my favorite spots of all of the waterfront here is the wetland. And this is a manufactured man-made wetland which takes half the stormwater from the village streets and brings it into the wetland here, where it's slowly circulated through the reed beds and continually circulated. When it rains and it gets to a certain level, water goes over the Weir Bridge, which is actually under this bridge, and out into the ocean, and it's basically been cleaned. This wetland has become a really great place. There's sticklebacks found in it. There's all different variety of ducks, geese. Beaver has recently been found in it, and it's become, I would say, a really natural environment in a really, really urban setting, which I think if you look at the Habitat Island and you look at the foreshore, we can create true natural environments in really dense urban areas, which I think is important for the biodiversity and the ecology of our urban environments. So one of the really interesting things about the streets in this neighborhood as well is that they are much narrower than normal City of Vancouver streets. They're also, a lot of them are permeable and are paved, so that there's a different rich texture that is different than the other neighborhoods. It's to encourage cars to slow down, for pedestrians to mix together with cyclists and the cars, and to really collect all the stormwater. So all the parking areas are all permeable paving, and the roadway is pavers, and it really does encourage people to drive slower and to kind of look around and have a different feel and character for their neighborhood. Being brought in early in on a project really makes a difference, because you can look at the big picture ideas. Also, as landscape architects, we never really do anything alone, and one of the things that we really need to do is to learn to collaborate with many different professionals. We also need to be champions, and we need to push the edges, because a lot of our work crosses many different barriers between planning, architecture, engineering, and when you think about that and you imagine all the things that you can do, it really helps to be innovative, to push, and also to think about the environment, because landscape architecture is really designing for humans in the environment. And if we remember that, and remember that we're also here to protect the environment but still have a great place for human beings to live, those are the things we need to remember as landscape architects.